Hey everyone, it's Simone. I'm here with Bella Crystal, and we're here for another soul communication. Tonight we are talking to the 14, and we're actually in the transit of the 14. Bella, why don't you tell everyone what we've been doing?
So this is your opportunity to come and play with us around Gene Key 14 and Gate 14. Right now the sun is going to shine on this gate and this Gene Key for 6 days. And it's a beautiful opportunity for us to tune into the energy, to see how we can work with it, and to have Simone who's role modeling how we actually can tap into the living transmission of the Gene Key. So that's what I feel is coming through a lot. And we love interaction. So if you are on, we would love you to ask questions. Even if you're asking questions when you're watching the replay, we do try to go back to it. And it's come through a lot today. We were just doing a video for the 5-1. And I feel like ecstasy and playfulness or lightheartedness was the words that came through for us. So it feels like those are words that I love when we work together, Simone. That even if you think that we're alive for something else, and then we realize that we have misunderstood each other, like it's always like with lightheartedness, we always, tune back into the path. And that's when we can take life a little bit more playfully than everything and the Gene Keys and human design. It can be so heavy. So can we come in not needing to know anything? Maybe you have it somewhere in your chart and you're like, what does it mean to have the 14 in my purpose? Or you share something that we can bring up on the screen. So any ways of co-creating with us are fun.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's see what the 14 has to say to us today. I like to communicate with the 14, the Hex and the I Ching, the Gate, Human Design, 14, and the Gene Keys, the soul, for the purpose of healing and wisdom for the highest good. 14, will you communicate with us? The first thing the 14 does is it brings me into a sound frequency. And in the middle of this, in the essence and the vibration of this frequency, I feel like I'm in a current being propelled forward. To describe what it feels like to be in this frequency, it is very calming and peaceful. It's beyond words. And I would like to simply rest in this frequency. And I invite you to rest in this frequency with me. It is a frequency that is so comforting. Alive. Abundant. Infinite. As far as the eye can see and beyond. It is a resonance. And it says, now notice how you feel in your body. Having communed with this vibratory field, this resonance. what I feel, what I experience in mine, and I'm hypothesizing that we may feel similar and different things, is I feel opened up. I feel the same, but more of me. Like I'm accessing more of me. And the 14 says there's infinite more to access. As much as you've accessed, there's infinitely more to access. It's unending. And if I have a gift for you, the 14 says, it is for you to open up and experience the unendingness of you, the infiniteness of you. It's boundless. And he just said to me, feel your heart beating as if it is the pulse of the bounteousness of you. And when he said that, it was like I was experiencing the heart, the pulse of that whole vibratory field that the 14 opened up to us. And somehow experiencing that vibration in my own heart, the quantum connectedness of the whole. And as I feel that in my body, I have this awareness of the possibility of anything and everything, infinite possibility. And there's an ease to that knowing. And the 14 says, yes. And the 14 asked, where would you like to go? Where would you like to explore in this vibratory field? What would you like to experience? And he shows me the resting in that vibratory field. And it's almost instantaneous. Like to be in that field is to be in the presence of the vibration that you desire. It reminds me of a magnetic resonance. I've experienced Bella's energy in this way, and I'm going to use it. The 14 is using it as a metaphor, that she has this capacity to move her energy to where corruption is and to simply shift that with her vibration. And it's almost as if the awareness that it's there brings her consciousness to that place and shifts it. And that's the kind of the mechanics of what the 14 is showing us. And he's saying, I encourage you to go into the very depths of your being, the very depths of your sacred union between your body and your soul, and to explore in depth what it is you wish, what is in you awaiting to be born, to be experienced, what inside of you is there for you to open to and to simultaneously be. And the 14 says the possibilities are endless. And he's kind of chuckling. He's saying, to some of you, this is a challenge. And to others of you, it may feel overwhelming. He says it need not be. I'm not saying that you have to be all things at once. I'm simply showing you a vibratory field, a possibility for you to explore in whatever rate, way that feels comfortable to you. And he shows me this in an image, and he helps me feel it in my body. It's like we have this depth and truth of vibration within us, and we can choose to be in that, or we can choose to remove ourselves from that. And the removing of ourselves from it is, in a sense, what's compromised. It's choosing to not be in the vibration of the truth of you. And he's encouraging us to maintain our vibration in the truth of who we are, not compromising that, and to go at whatever rate it is to open to the depth of who we are. He says it's not a race. And he shows me the quality of our engagements with the self, with the depth within. And he's encouraging us to enjoy the depths of our being. And Bella, he's inviting you to be in conversation with him.
It's so funny because I think I heard that I was going to be mentioned before I was mentioned, so I kind of came on. And I have the 2, and I just feel like I'm met, because the 2 comes from the G center, and it meets the 14 in the sacral in human design. It's this tantric channel, and there's just something. Yeah, it's like that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling met, and it's almost like I've been waiting my whole life to feel met. But when this 14 comes in, and I guess it's not a coincidence, because what we call this channel is the keeper of the keys. So we have the energy field, we have the powerhouse, like we say, we have the wagon who has the energy and can go forward with consistency in the 14. But without the 2, it doesn't have direction. So it's almost like kind of the feminine and the masculine together, you could say, or the direction and the energy. And I think, yeah, it's so beautiful when they co-create together. And it's also, when we look at them in the shadow frequency, it's the wagon that is leaking, and it's the feminine that is lost, or the direction that is lost. So I'm kind of just feeling into how beautiful it feels when they meet, and that it's this sacral life force that is being circulated up to the heart, and that human beings are capable of that. We have this animal nature, we have this energy, but really, what feels so fulfilling is when we can take that kind of life force that is general for all of us, and we can sublimate it and take it up into our heart, our G center, which is like in individuation. It's who am I? Where am I going? What is love? And that's the expression that comes out. So for me, it feels powerful, and it's more a feeling than the words that you actually said. I think the energy feel, like you were saying.
That for me is still so present. Like, I want to be in the silence of this vibration and simply feel it. And I have allowed my body to be a vessel. So I'm saying to the 14, and some of you who are with us may have had the experience of the vibration that the 14 has brought through, but I'm saying to the 14 that I allow my vessel to be a conduit for sharing this vibration with everyone who listens to this video, or anyone, and now I'm feeling it pulse through me. So I'm hoping that anyone who wants to feel that vibration can have some experience of it. And the 14 says allow. All you need to do is allow it, and to know it is there. And I heard my voice get so slow. It's like I'm being just really moved by the vibration of the 14. The 14 is taking us to the bottom of the hologenetic profile, the gene key profile, down to life, the purpose sphere, and the attractor. Now it brings my awareness up to the culture sphere. And between those three spheres, it makes an arrow, draws an arrow, a geometry of an arrow. And that arrow, then the 14 starts to, in a sense, turn the arrow towards other spheres. So if you take your purpose and attractor sphere and your culture, and you use that as a pointer, a way to look at your other spheres, he says it can enlighten you to where you're going and how you'll get there. And he's asking you, Bella, do you want to unpack this?
I want to hear a little bit more, I think. Yeah, I don't know how to unpack it yet.
He says, what I'm pointing to is a journey. And when he shows it to me, it looks like this. It looks like this. And then imagine that the SQ is the, in a sense, if it was a spinner, imagine that this SQ is what it's spinned on. And then you can turn that to anywhere in the genetic, the profile. And he says that this is the journey. So he's showing an example of, take that design and move it toward the vocation sphere. And he says that's the journey to the vocation sphere. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, now that when I saw the image, I do feel like I wonder if that was what I was writing about in the archetype. Was it I realized that, was it the 2 and the 14 that were lovers? I think so. And it's almost like we have the sacred marriage in the SQ, and it's the feminine and the masculine, or it's direction and power, how, whatever polarities you will see. And really, that SQ, it's probably Venus and a higher octave of Venus, which is Saturn. And then we have Mars, which is the core. So there is something here where we have that dance, and where the core is the immature masculine that we're bringing in. And that when we have that pathway of realization, it's that dance. But what I feel is almost like the 14 is the stability. Somehow it's Saturn coming in and saying, I can hold it. I can hold it. And even if it's in the I Ching, it's heaven over fire or fire over heaven. It's those two elements. So you would think you could get burned on it. But what I feel from the energy that has come through today is basically being able to, and I think we actually were mentioning that with Ashley earlier today, being able to hold all that energy in your vessel. That's what I feel for the 14, and that is the stability. And that's the higher octave of any values. You can have all the values you want in your mind. You can have all the ways of thinking about it, but it's not until it's embodied, it's not until you can hold it within your vessel that you have any kind of stability. And some of the questions that we have today in the comments are about those things, kind of the mind and the body, or the conscious and the unconscious. And I feel like the 14 is saying, if you can't hold it in your body, it's not worth anything. And when you have it in your body, you can go straight to the core on that pathway of realization between the SQ and the core. And you can really see then how Venus in the SQ and Mars in the core come together and create what we can say like the alchemy or the family, but it's important to have Saturn, and that's not really what has been spoken about yet in the hologenetic profile, because that's part of the next sequence, the harmony, the star pole harmony sequence. And it's almost like we still kind of have to a little bit, not struggle, but become really, really aware of SQ and core. What are the patterns? What is blocking our realization? Where is it that we're not embodying the truth of the higher frequencies? And then it's like, when we think that it's almost like not possible, then we find Saturn, and then it makes sense. Something like that is what I'm feeling.
He said, the 14 says, that's it exactly, and we can even go deeper. And he takes the hologenetic profile and makes it multidimensional. And so then I'm looking, if we're, instead of looking at a flat disk, we're looking at multi-layers. He takes me to the bottom of what would be on the bottom floor, if you will. And then I can see how that vibration at the bottom floor, in a sense, holds the whole container. So I'm not quite sure what that bottom floor would be, but I can see the spheres, and I can see how that is part of the vibratory field that holds the whole vibration. In a sense, if we take the whole, if we're looking at a sheet of paper if we're looking at our hologenetic profile as flat, and then suddenly it becomes a ball, or so it's got depth and breadth, and this way, that way, it's every way, and it becomes multidimensional. And to have that multidimensional experience of the whole profile, we do need that vibration, and there's something that is very important about what holds it from the place, the palm of the hand, if you will. It's the best way I can describe it. I think you understand what the 14 is saying.
Yeah, and I would say, I had a conversation with Richard earlier this week, and I'm speaking to Brian Tomsick tomorrow, and he's exploring, like both of them are exploring the multidimensionality. And it's like we always say, Simone, when something is on the field, in the field, it comes in, right? So it's the way that it wants to express today, because it's in the ether, and it's part of like, what's the discovery? What's the next thing? And the Merkaba has to be multidimensional, and that's where we're all going. And that's why it's so important. We have 2,600 people that are registered for the deep dive of the Venus, because it's almost like we can inherently feel that we need, like we were saying, we need to look at the SQ and the core and all the other spheres in the Venus and become so aware of our patterns. It's almost like we get so tired of saying, oh, I don't dare to do this, or I can't change this, or I have to be in my head, until like that story feels so old, so that we are so ready to start to feel the multidimensionality, because that story has been written and rewritten and rewritten, and now we are ready to create with Saturn. I feel like create that nest, or that part of like kind of where the helicopter lands. But it takes courage and it takes awareness, and those are the two ingredients that the Venus sequence are giving us, and that we were seeing too in our Venus immersion, Simone, that you've been like such an amazing part of. It's really what we are seeing, like, or I guess transparency too. Like there's a transparency, there's courage, there's awareness. Those are the three ingredients that I'm seeing like really coming through now that we are in that pathway of realization with our group.
Yes, and one of the things that's so powerful as you were speaking and the 14 was vibrating, it was showing me how it's a fluid process. Like it would show me the flat hologenetic profile, and then it would pop out into multidimensionality, and the vibration is what held it in that multidimensional sphere. And then the vibration in a sense shifted, and then it went back down into a flat kind of experience, and then it popped back out into multidimensionality. And so as I was watching, I saw the word fluidity, and I actually felt that in my body, this the fluidity of popping into multidimensionality and then coming back into the kind of disc, if you will, and then the ball and the disc and the ball. And it feels like breath, a resonance of breath, of pulse. And the 14 wants us to know that it's not wrong to be in any either of those states, that it's really a process and a journey. And he's using the 14 is using the metaphor of a singer. What he showed me was a singer practicing and then performing. And even the most dedicated singer or musician, one who practices, consistently and is committed, has amazing performances, and then other times understands that the performance wasn't at his or her capacity. It doesn't make it a failure. It makes it a learning experience. And that when you stretch as a musician and you're, reaching new chords and trying new harmonies, that it takes, it's practice. Sometimes it'll magically be, you might fall upon the harmony, the magic, the tune, or how it shifts by a spontaneous, in a sense, synchronicity, or some might say accident. And then you experience the beauty of that spontaneous, creative, magnificence, beauty, whatever. And then you're like, oh, I want to do that again. And then you practice, and you really find your rhythm with it. And then you perform it, and then another time it's not there. And he's saying, don't, beat yourself up. It's a continual journey. Once you get there, there'll be another one. and another one and another one. And there is this process of the journey breathing, if you will, and expanding with you as you explore and play. And I also want to note that each time I said he, the reason I self-corrected to the 14 is that while the 14 has masculine energy, it really is emphasizing the sacred union and doesn't really want to be identified as masculine or feminine, but really from the come from of the union, the sacred union within. He says, that's it exactly. He was pushing me to kind of share that. So
yeah, I want to mention something about the mechanics that I see. We often say that human design is all about mechanics, and some people love it for that, and some people don't like it for that. And what I'm seeing is that when we are coming into these later spheres of the hologenetic profile, we have mechanics, but we have quantum mechanics. So already when you were saying, the fluidity, for example, in the star pearl, we have the structure and we have the flow. And it's basically like we have pathways, quantum pathways. They're not just going like in the Venus. We would go from the purpose to the attraction to the IQ to the EQ, the SQ to the core. No, when we go into the star pearl, we have quantum, and even just a normal pearl, we have arrows that go in various directions. But in the star that has the 6 sides and then the pearl in the middle, we have structures and we have flow. And it's different ways of functioning. And I'm sure that when it's released, it's going to be even more explained than what it was 4 or 5 years ago when it first was brought through. So that's one thing. And the other thing I really feel that can be a little bit hard to grasp when we say, oh, it pops out from like 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. I really feel like we can speak about the same thing as the frequency band. It's like you cannot just be in the gift all the time or not in the city all the time. You have this, like, it's always a flow. And you're going to be sometimes in the shadow as a human being. You can have the pathway of the gift, and you're going to sometimes go into the creator possibility of the city. So I feel like it's a similar thing. It's like we are going to be it's not that 2D can't exist. It's maybe a lower frequency. And it's not that that's bad, but it's like it's going to be, it's the same band in a way. But instead of saying from the shadow to the gift to the city, we say from 2D to 3D to multi-D, So that's how it felt to me, to kind of feel like, to feel like I don't have to wrong anything. It's just different dimensions or different frequencies.
Yeah, the 14 is showing it to me in a different way. It's like it's being shown to me in wave form. So that when we're experiencing it in 2D, the waveform is so tight, there's not a lot of space. And then when it pops into multidimensionality, there's a lot of space in the waveform. And there's space for so much more than it is when it's so tight that it almost looks flat. He says it's not really flat, but it's experienced as almost, 2D. But then when there's space between the waveform, it pops into multidimensionality. There's a lot more space.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like we have a little bit of time. Maybe we could talk into having the 14. Anya has in the EQ, Eden has in the culture. So maybe, and I often feel like there is some kind of chalice, and it has come through in your channelings too, Simone, where it feels like the EQ needs to be resolved for the culture to really be able to bloom. Because if you think about the 2-dimensional chart, you have the IQ right under the culture. So it's almost like you have to resolve it on a personal and emotional plane before you can embody it and like really bring value to the world and in the blue sequence. So maybe there's some correlation between the EQ and the culture. But what would the 14 say in those two spheres?
The first thing the 14 shows me is the resonance in each of those spheres is slightly different. In the EQ, it's being shown to me in wave form. And in the EQ, oh, it's so interesting. It's almost like the yin and the yang, and the yin and the yang and the yin inside each one. So when I went into the EQ, it was showing me that the waveforms were more consistent. And then it showed me what happened when turbulence happened. And then when it took me to the culture sphere, it was like the turbulence of the group and then the consistency of the self within the group. So there, you see how it's like the self and the turbulence in the EQ, and then the turbulence when I got up to the culture, it was like the turbulence is everyone else's vibration and yours consistently. And then I was like, oh wow. So, and one of them is really, in the EQ it's internal, and in the culture it's in a sense external, but it's internal and external in the EQ, and it's internal and external in the culture. So what a beautiful way to kind of experience the EQ and the culture. And the 14 says that when you understand that, it opens those spheres up for you. And the 14 is hoping that this understanding, this wisdom helps you find, in a sense, grounding within the turbulence. And it flashed me this, it was a feeling and a picture that came through, and it was that I was on an airplane and I experienced great turbulence, but I wasn't afraid, even though the plane was shaking up in itself, because I had this wisdom within myself that the plane was going to land. So inside of my seat, I was completely calm, even though the plane was, being jostled by, and think about that, when you're in an airplane and you're jostled, through turbulence, it can feel completely uncontrollable. But what you have control over is the way you are within yourself within that turbulence. So that was the first thing that the 14 showed me. And the 14 is saying that when you can have that, it's not really the word, it feels like grounding in my body, but that's not the completeness of the place that the 14 is coming from. It's but let's just go with that, because I'm getting it as a feeling that's kind of undescribable other than grounding, is that when our EQ is inside of our culture, when we're grounded in ourself and we know ourself, that's more a knowingness, is the groundedness of the EQ. When we are grounded in ourselves within our culture, then we can experience the turbulence of the culture. We can experience our knowingness through the turbulence of the culture in a grounded way. And then he takes me back down to the 14 takes me back down to the EQ, and he shows, the 14 is showing me that in the EQ, the knowing of self is stable and turbulent. the parts of self that you know and that you've explored. That's, what you know of the truth of yourself is the knowing stability, the groundedness. But there are parts of us that we either choose to not know or haven't brushed up against to know we need to know. That it's a constant evolution, and that the more we know of ourselves, and by know, the 14 means are aware of, acknowledge, even if we haven't come to terms with all of the parts of self, it's, the looking in the mirror without flinching. Even if it's that awareness that allows us to, the unflinching awareness, the courage to look at ourselves, to hold whatever it is we see without flinching. That exploratory process is in a sense, the multidimensional action of the EQ. It is in a sense, the turbulence. And the more we're willing to see of ourselves, to hold of ourselves, the more we're willing to see and know of ourselves. And it's the turbulence, in a sense, is the unwillingness to, or inability to hold all that you are capable of being aware of, all that you do see. That's what causes the bobble. And the EQ, the 14 shows that, sometimes when you see and you're willing to see and you acknowledge everything that you do see in the EQ, there can still be turbulence, because it's like, the more you see, the more that awakens to everything in your field. So having a new perception of self, or a new awareness of self, and then how that vibrates out into the rest of your world. Because when you have it, whether you say it or you don't say it, all the people you're in relationship are going to feel it. And so that creates turbulence. And I just had the awareness in my vessel that turbulence, the 14 uses the word turbulence with non-judgment. Turbulence is simply a disequilibrium of pressure, of vibration, if you will. The 14 does not use the word turbulence with judgment. It's a change in cabin pressure. It's a change in vibratory field, if you will. So there's a neutrality to how the 14 talks about turbulence, which is really a gift, to see turbulence with non-judgment in that way. So he's turning back to you, Bella, and the 14 is saying, what do you think? How do you engage with this information?
I have so many notes. Like, I have a whole thing, like 2 pages, and it's like all of geometries and dimensions, and and then I'm looking in the chat too, where people, or in the comments, where people are saying, the explanation is so comforting and clear. It's not just clouded, guru explanations. So I feel like it's really, it's really, it's comforting. And I was tuning in also to the question that Amanda was asking, because I kind of know we can go so wide, and I kind of know we have to kind of wrap up. But she was asking, why is the channel 214 considered like essential? Was that the word she was using? Not essential. Like, why is it considered foundational in a business? And I guess that I can just, and I love that she's asking, which I believe that she's a human design analyst, and I love that she's kind of thinking outside the box instead of just saying, okay, this is why 214 is essential or foundational. What I feel is that it has a lot to do with what we were saying before. It's this middle pillar channel that moves pure life force up to the G center, the heart, the direction. And we know in global cycles, we know like here we have the locks of humanity, here we have the way of humanity. It's so much about the G center, and here we have those, the keeper of the keys in the channel to circulate that energy together, of course, in the business with other pentas. But I really love that you're not just going to BG5 thinking about human design consulting. And I would love to hear from the 14 as well, like how would that explanation be through the eyes of the 14? Why is the 214 channel considered foundational in businesses?
The 14 shows this to me through the lungs and the heart. You can't breathe without the inhale and the exhale. Your heart doesn't beat without the flow through all of the parts of the heart. So there's no pulse with only the down or the up. The 14 says there is a resonance that hums, vibrates when the 2 and the 14 are in sacred union. And the 14 says, what does this mean? Does this mean that if you don't have the 2, but you have the 14, that you can't be in sacred union within yourself between the 2 and the 14? It's not true. That every person has the capacity for sacred union, for breath, for heartbeat between their 2 and their 14. And conscious contemplation on the relationship of the 2 and the 14 within you brings that vibration to life. And the 14 says that might be hard for some of you who believe that if you have the gate or you don't have the gate, or it's in your profile or it's not in your profile. But the truth is that it's in your DNA. It's in the fractal of your DNA. And so you have the capacity to activate the breath between the 2 and the 14. And the 14 wants you to know that for each of you, that is going to be unique in a sense and different. While there are some themes, it's in the themes play out in the construct of where you do have emphasis in your gates or your hologenetic profile. That's where the influence really is dramatic, the 14 says. But everyone has the capacity to activate the sacred union between the 14 and the 2, and to breathe with them. To when the 14 goes back to the heart, it's the word flow is used, and I can literally see the flow, between the right and left side of the heart and the quadrants of the heart. So it's even fractalized within the heart. And any one of those valves not working is a disconnection of the connection between the 2 and the 14. And the 14 says, this is a fun exploration. This is a place to delight in getting to know the connection within you. It's power. The 14 is saying that this could be a lifetime of study, the connection between the 2 and the 14, and activating the 2 and the 14 in your DNA and bringing it to life. And that many of you will delight in this connection. And the 14 says others of you will not feel like that's the place you want to contemplate. And the 14 says it's all okay. And the 14 does, the 14 flashed me an image of like when some of us contemplate the connection between the 2 and the 14, in a sense, you're opening up that connection, that vibration for all of humanity, that you put that in the field. And it almost shows me, it's like it's showing an ignition. So when you really study that connection within yourself and you put that into the field, it's an ignition for other people to want to explore that pathway. And as the 14 showed me that and showed me the vibratory resonance of that, I was taken right to the Delta, and how when you fly in the flight of the Delta and you are contemplating each of those keys or pathways within the Delta, how connected you feel and how you're opening that up to all of those vibrations and the culmination of that experience to all of humanity. So super powerful how the 14 connects that contemplation to the, what happens with the Delta.
Yeah, I just realized a little kind of funny thing, because it felt like, oh, why is the 14 and the 2 in the SQ? And then this is why I feel like you and I, Simone, were doing human design and gene keys and we're bridging the gap. Because you don't have to go further than into the human design chart. And it's in the middle. The 14 too, it's what connects the heart with the life force. And that's exactly what the SQ does. So of course it's there. Of course that makes sense.
Wow. And so thus the 14 saying it's available to all of us.
Yeah. So do you want to thank the 14? I feel like there might be more, but maybe we are rounding up.
The 14 takes me from this vibratory field and shows me how, with the experience of this, it's as if I'm flying like an eagle. Like I'm able to have a bird's eye, an eagle eye view of the construct of everything. Super powerful. I feel like I'm flying with the multidimensional holographic field, and I'm aware of the whole. I'm aware of the pieces and parts, the spheres within the whole DNA complex and geometry. And I have to say, I am blown away by the 14 and so incredibly grateful.
Yeah, what a powerful, I don't even know what to call it, but it feels like a messenger. It feels like the 14 is a pure messenger that comes here, and it doesn't want to be called him or her. It's what we are speaking about, Simone, with Ashley and Tim. It's about the trivial consciousness, beyond duality. It's not this or that, or it's this and that, and then the relationship between, or the sacred child, or whatever that trinity is. It's beyond the duality.
I also feel an interconnectedness within my own being. So imagine we're looking up at the night sky and we're looking at a constellation and we're seeing the stars and the we have the experience of each of the stars and the constellation as a whole. From doing this, from communicating with the 14, that's what I feel like in my vessel. Like suddenly I have an awareness of each star and the constellation as a whole, and an awareness of where the constellation is in the galaxy, in the universe. And the pulse of each star and the pulse, the radiance of the whole constellation, and how if one of those stars wasn't present or the constellation wasn't present, how that would shift, almost diminish the whole universe. And so if we think about that with each of ourselves, that within you are the points of the stars or the spheres of the profile, and that we're each constellations, and how without each of us, how the galaxy, the world, the universe would be different. It points to the sacredness of each of us and our place on Earth, in the universe, in the galaxy. I had like a lived experience of the connection of the fractal between my body and constellation, if you will. So grateful. That feels complete. The 14 has gone back to that vibration that came through at the beginning. So just saying thank you.
Well, thank you, Simone. And we were doing the 5-1 and now we've done this, and I felt like everything that came through today, it was a lot. And it's almost like my vessel is asking me, can you hold all this in your vessel or are you checking out? Because it was the impact, and that's what I feel like. This is the coding ring of fire, and it's fire and heaven together. It's very powerful, and it's easy to kind of be like, no, it's too much. I can't hold all this. Too much wisdom, too much. So yeah, I'm so grateful as well. And yeah, I feel like we also, for every transit, it's almost like a story that's told from archetype. Like it's almost like when I hear you, Simone, as well, I can feel it made sense to be in the 1, in the 43, in the 14. Like I wish that we could kind of do this like marathon and just kind of do this, like I don't know how many hours of video it would be, so that to just walk through the wheel. And I guess in a way that's what we're going to do next year in our inner circle. But I already feel the anticipation of like each archetype building on each other and bringing through the message.
I feel that too. And how each cycle through the multidimensional, the space between the waveforms that creates the multidimensionality just expands.
And I feel like we are gonna bring in John again. I feel like he's here. I think I got a message from him too. So I'm like, John, now it's time for you again.
It's time. It's time.
With you in the multidimensionality of the soul. Well, thank you, Simone. And I'm gonna post in the comments a soul blueprint reading where I basically go in and kind of desiccate maybe the core wound, like some of the places that I feel stand out to me in the hologenic profile and the human design. And Simone comes in and that's what she just did with the 14, but with you, with your soul consciousness. So that's amazing to experience like completely for yourself. I'm going to post that link. And also if you want to start with something like smaller, we have mini readings too. So I'm going to post those links, and we are going to be back, I guess, either on Thursday or next Monday with the next archetype. Thank you, Simone. Thank you, the 14. Thank you, everybody who are co-creating with us.